Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning for this mentorship session on seed starting. This morning, we have with us Michelle Grosek, and she is one of the owners of Bear Butte Gardens, and they are located on the west side of South Dakota near Sturgis. And this morning, she's going to share with us a little bit more about seed starting, and I'm excited to have her share her knowledge with you all. So Michelle, I'll turn it over to you, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions. If anyone wants to put their questions in the chat during the presentation, I'll do my best to let you know about those, Michelle.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks, Morgan. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and start right off by sharing my presentation, and then we can talk about whatever everyone wants to talk about after that. You guys seeing that yet?
Yes.
Okay. Now I just need to be able to see it. Hold on. Okay. Okay. So this is a pretty basic seed starting presentation. My husband and I have Bear Butte Gardens, and we grow mostly in outdoor gardens at this point in time, but we do have a high tunnel greenhouse as well. And just one high tunnel, the measure is 30 by 72 feet. And then we have a starter greenhouse where we just start our trays in there and then transplant those seedlings into either the high tunnel or the outdoor gardens. And so let's go. We're going to just talk just about some of the, like I said, the very basics today. And then if you have questions beyond that, I'm happy to answer what I know. I utilize seeds from various different sources. I like to go as regional as I can. And so Prairie Road Organic out of North Dakota is one of my favorites. And then Meadowlark Hearth down by Scottsbluff, Nebraska is a favorite as well. And then from there, I branch out to, there's a seed co-op in Montana called Triple Divide. And so they have various growers that grow and save seed for them. So I get some seed through them. And I just kind of keep going out regionally. Then I get some from Iowa. And then if there's just some specific things that I want and I can't find from those first seed companies, then I will go out to the bigger ones like Johnny's or Baker. Baker Creek's not certified organic, but sometimes I do order some stuff from them. High Mowing is another one that I really like. And then in the middle of this starting screen, there's the Stella Natura biodynamic planting calendar. I like to use that for scheduling what we're seeding each day and what we're transplanting. We use the soil blocking method, which is the trays down on the bottom there that look like brownies. They are every year when I do a post saying, you know, we're soil blocking again, then somebody says, dang it, I thought those were brownies. And we should just always have brownies, I guess, when we're soil blocking too. And so that's kind of a fun method that I learned about probably in 2010 or so when I was reading an Elliott Coleman book, The New Organic Grower, I believe it was. And he talks about soil blocking in there. It goes back a very long time to the Mexican pre-Spanish, colonization, I guess, in Mexico, and they were doing soil blocking down there to start their seeds. And so, and then the photo on the right is just, I have a very simple, my early seed starting that's in the house or in our farm stand here. We just have these big plastic shelving units, and then I just tie fluorescent, or now I'm kind of gradually switching over to LED shop lights, and I just buy the cheapest ones, cheapest bulbs that I can get. And that's how I start my seedlings for like tomatoes and that sort of thing. The seedlings that can handle cold when they're germinating go up into my starter greenhouse. Okay, so as I go through, I'm just, I do this presentation every now and again, so I kind of just have like these standard terms I like to go over. Probably everybody is familiar with them, but you know, direct seeding versus starting in trays, and fertilizer. We don't utilize a lot of fertilizer out here. We just kind of compost everything that with our own materials that we put into our compost pile. Phosphates, I'll talk about those. Germination, that's kind of the, you don't have germination, you don't have plants. Okay, this is a little bit small, but it's kind of a nice little calendar for the various different garden vegetables. And I'm pretty sure with this one, I went out to this website, probably put in my last frost date in there, which I typically plan about May 15th to 20th, somewhere is my last frost date. And then this calendar then just automatically populated the when to start your seeds indoors and when to transplant outdoors from that. And there's a host of these available online now, but nice to have. And if you're gathering information to get your seedlings started, then I like to go through these different sources, and I'm just going to click on this one and hopefully it will work. Everybody can see that okay? Okay. So the National Centers for Environmental Information, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration as well. If you just go up here in the search and put last frost date, and then when to expect your last spring freeze, this site has a lot of cool information, not even about your frost dates, but just so much information. If you like to geek out on data, this is a good general site to go to. So then we're going to go down here and see. So this information is based on the last 30 years of climate data. So we're firmly up here in the May 1st to 15th. And then the darker green is going to be the May 16th to 30th for last spring freeze. And let's see, I'm going to go to climate normals. Here we go. Okay, so there are 30-year normals. That's what I want to look at. You look at annual and seasonal. And then I'm just going to pop in last frost date here, and over here I'm going to put in Sturgis, South Dakota, since that's where I am at. And it's going to pull up Fort Meade because that's the closest data that they have. And Fort Meade is actually a little bit closer to me than Sturgis is. So I'm going to just do a preboot real quick here. But you can put in any zip code, any town, and it will give you the closest station where they have gathered the data for the last 30 years. And then you get your summary of annual normals here from 1991 to 2020. So at Fort Meade, what I do with this then is say I'm looking for 32 degrees, the second number here on the top chart. And I want to know when is like my safe time to expect the last 32 degree night to happen. I'm going to go all the way over here to, nope. See here. So there's a 10% chance that on, get this right, on May 21st, that we're going to hit 32 degrees. If you go all the way over to the right, there's a 90% chance on April 26th that you're going to hit 32 degrees. So it just kind of gives you those percentages in there if you want to be you know, a 10%. How do you want to hedge your bets on this one? Do you want to go with the 10% chances, or do you want to, some people like to put, say, their tomatoes out and get the fastest tomato in their neighborhood, the earliest tomato in their neighborhood, then they might go over here and do a late April tomato. But I would certainly suggest you have some wall of water or some sort of covers for those tomatoes to get them through those last 32. So it's kind of fun to just kind of go through here and look at this. And then, yeah, this chart doesn't have that on it. So skip back out of here. Okay. And these other ones, the second one is just almanac information. So similar information, probably not quite as accurate, but it'll be close. And then plantmaps.garden.org, any of those, you can go out and do a Google search and find some of these last frost date, and then also your first frost date in the fall. So as you're gathering information, you'll want that. And then you'll also want your seed packets of the seeds you've already purchased. They've got a lot of information on them, or the catalog that you ordered the seeds out of. Sometimes we'll have even more information within the catalog. Probably some sort of a calendar, whether that's your online calendar that you like to put all of your information into, or I am still kind of a wall calendar sort of person. I like to be able to glance up there and just see everything right in front of me. Or also you might want to have your farmer's almanac for some of that interesting information. And like I said, I like to use the Stella Natura, the biodynamic calendars for planting out my planting. This is a really tiny chart, but basically this one is just saying it has the various different garden vegetables on there. And say you want to do tomatoes, they're way down at the bottom here. You would, if you want to start them, your last frost date, and I'm going to say May 20th, I'm going to say is my last frost date. So then if your seed packet typically is going to say start 4 to 6 weeks before last frost date, start your seeds inside. So then I'll back up and oh, okay. Well, I'll back up and I'll do, on my calendar, I'll mark April 20th. Or April 15th, somewhere in there as my seed starting date for my tomatoes. And then this little tiny chart says, go 6 to 8 weeks from sowing your seed and set out 1 to 2 weeks after your last frost date. So they're playing it safe here. And that's, most people around the Black Hills tend to play it safe because our frost dates can vary so widely. And so I probably won't set my tomatoes out, even though it might say, May 20th or May 25th or something is good to go, depending on what I'm seeing in the spring. Sometimes it might be Memorial Day weekend before I'll even start setting tomatoes out. And we do quite a few tomatoes. We do anywhere from usually about 500 to 700 tomatoes. And I just, I don't have the capacity to be replanting those. So I'm going to go safe rather than early. Here's a little bit more data. Same sort of thing about your probabilities for spring frost. And again, I have Fort Meade on here. But then you also see this has your fall frost date level, fall first freeze dates on here too. And then how that's handy then is if you follow all the way over to the right, then you'll see how many frost-free days you have between your last frost in the spring and your first frost in the fall. So I might get 120 days here of frost-free days. And that comes in handy then when you're looking at the seed packets or ordering your seeds, and they say, let me think, corn can range anywhere from like 82 days to 100 and some days, depending on the variety. Hot peppers, if you want to do a bell pepper, don't even know right off, I don't have that packet in front of me, but it's you know, a reasonable number of days. We can do bell peppers in our gardens here. If I want to do hot peppers, or like the super hots they call them, so say scorpion peppers or Carolina Reapers or something like that, I'm going to do those in my high tunnel because I don't have enough days for them. That they're going to be 110 to 115, 20 days for those peppers. So it's kind of rare to be able to get them all the way to harvest level in the outdoor gardens. Okay, so we're just going to go over a few seed packets here and the information that's on the packets. I think lots of times, you know, people see when you're buying the seed packets, and this is the time when you're in the store and you see them all. And I order most of my seeds because I like to, like I said, I like to get them regionally, and I like to get bigger quantities of seed than are typically in the packets at the Baumgars or Menards or wherever you might see seed packets. But that doesn't mean I cannot walk by those displays and not buy something. I have to buy a packet or two every time I walk by those displays. So this is, you know, your packets, and they've got all of this information on there. This little bit that's along the side here in the small print, I just kind of enlarged that along the bottom here. And it's good information. You know, somebody took all the time to research all of this and get this on every single seed packet. So we need to pay attention to that. So when I'm doing my seed starting presentations, I just kind of go through, you know, what is all of this information that's on your seed packets. Let's see, I need to move my screen around a little bit here so that I can see that part over there. Okay, there we go. So the packet is going to tell you if you need full sun, part sun, or sometimes even a shady spot, your days to maturity. And that's right on the front of these high mowing ones, 85 days to maturity for this tomato. How early should you start your seeds? 6 to 8 weeks before planting outside. Are these determinate or indeterminate tomatoes? So how tall are they going to get? Are they going to be a nice little compact bushy tomato that you could do in a pot on your patio? Or are they going to be an indeterminate tomato and you're going to need to put up a really good trellising system of some sort for them? How many seeds are in the packet? Now I've noticed that lots of times the packets that are in your kind of big box stores, I guess I'll say, don't tell you how many seeds are in the packet. And there's not very many usually because it's for your backyard gardener. You don't need a lot of seeds, but I do really like to know how many seeds are in every packet. And so this packet here tells you how many grams there are. There's 1/10 of a gram of tomato seeds. And that's just a quick Google search. How many seeds are in a gram? How many tomato seeds specifically are in a gram of tomato of seeds? And so I looked that up, and it's 25 to 30 seeds in 1/10 of a gram. So that's what you're going to get in that packet. These are open pollinated tomatoes, so they're not a hybrid. If you wanted to save the seed from these, you'd probably get a similar tomato next year. They usually will tell you how deep to put the seed, how far apart to plant them, and the days to germination, how far apart to put your plants once you're transplanting them, maybe your plant height. And notice this says 4 feet tall, so something to keep in mind. And then how to store your seeds. Sometimes it will also give you that information. Should you store it in a cool space, a dark space, dry space, all of that. Go over a few of these. Oops, get back up my.
We do have one question on that slide.
Okay.
How do you define the days to maturity? Is that from the date of germination or when you plant them out in the garden?
That is a really awesome question that I was going to look up here. How about I'll answer that one before we're done here, because I am not sure. This says the average number of days from planting until it's time to harvest. Okay, some packets are very clear. Sorry, I'm doing this on the fly. Yeah, it just says average number of days from planting until, so yes, I need to research that as well. And I meant to do that before the session and I didn't. So if anybody gets that information and you wanna share that, let me know. Okay, we're gonna go on to just corn real quick. Similar information, but you're gonna have longer, sometimes some longer. So this corn has 75 to 80 days required. So that's gonna be direct seeded. Every now and again, I'll come across somebody that's starting their corn seeds inside and then transplanting them. For me, I think that's maybe if I was doing just a couple short rows of corn, I would do that. But it's too much transplanting for me. So I put them straight out into the ground. Now, corn definitely needs a soil temperature before it's going to germinate. And this packet says that. It says your soil temperature needs to be 55 to 60 degrees. And sometimes we can hit that in April, late April, but sometimes we're not there until way into May, depending on what happens with our spring. And so the people that are doing succession plantings of corn, like up north of us is irrigation district. So they're doing many plantings of corn. So every week they're doing a corn planting. Every 1 to 2 weeks they will put in corn. Again, same sort of information on this. Of course, your distance apart is going to be a little bit different with corn. Want to remember with corn, if you're just doing a little bit in your garden, make sure you have multiple rows that will cross to pollinate each other, because it pollinates by wind and air movement. And so you need to have several rows close together. This is a company that I order bulk from. And so they don't have the pretty pictures on their packages, but they do still have some good information. They do a little bit more with their information about what your finished product is going to be like. So how to cook this, this will be a creamy consistency bean. It's a dried bean. And that's, if you're looking at certain things, do you want to grow it for your fresh product or your dried product? And that's very true with beans. So lots of times a bean can be used for both, for fresh harvesting and eating fresh beans. And it can also some of them can be left on the plant until they dry, and you can harvest them in the fall, and those will be your dried beans through the winter then. So these are 109 days because you're harvesting them as a dry bean. So a long amount. And then this also gives you a little information about the farm the beans came from. This is like a co-op type situation. I did 4 ounces on this one, so it's probably, I don't know how many beans are in 4 ounces, but a good number of beans. Okay. And then I think this is my last seed packet, Meadowlark Hearth, again from down by Scottsbluff, Nebraska. They're doing some really great work. A lot of open pollinated, maybe mostly it might be all open pollinated from Meadowlark Hearth. This one, the reason I put this one up is because there are some things that we can seed and get them started and actually transplant them outside before your last frost. And that would be your cold crops. And so I have a few terms over here on the right. A cold crop can withstand some frost. Typically, you can put them out about 2 weeks before your last frost date. So you can do some April planting with these or May 1st planting with these. And that's kind of nice because then you're not having to transplant everything at one time. And then we have cole crops, C-O-L-E, sounds similar, can be just a tad bit different. Cole crops refer to plants in the cruciferous family. So that's the mustard family. So all cold crops, C-O-L-E, are cold crops, but not all cold crops are cold crops. And so, so the mustard family then is a pretty big bunch of plants, like your broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower. All of those are within the mustard family. So then those can also be called brassicas. And so that's another name for cruciferous vegetables. So your broccoli, cabbage, kohlrabi, oh, I left the L out of that, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, kale, bok choy, pak choy, all of those are brassicas. And then you have some cool season crops that can handle cooler temperatures, but they're not as hardy as your cold crops. So your spinach, your Asian greens like Mizuna and oh gosh, I have a whole bunch of them that I start early season, the Asian green types, and your onions. So what are we looking for on this packet is you're sowing it indoors 4 to 6 weeks before you're setting it out in the garden, which is 2 weeks before your last frost. And then the number of seeds in the packet and the transplanting information. Oh, I have one more. Arugula. Arugula is just a very, if you look at the packet, it says ready in 20 days for cutting. And so it's a bitter green. It's a very healthy green. And it grows fast. And so that's why I also like the taste of arugula, but sometimes that's an acquired taste. And so I really like to get arugula started and get some of those little baby greens coming up as early as possible. And then it will go quite a while in the fall again too. As soon as it starts cooling down in the fall, then it will start really kicking in again. And it's pretty popular. I have certain customers that come out and buy bags, huge bags of arugula from me because they love it so much. On the right-hand side here, you'll see reference to info from Johnny's seed catalogs. Johnny's is a good seed company. And what I really like about Johnny's is that they have so much information on their website and in their catalogs as well. So if you want to plant, like this information says, if you want to plant 500-foot rows and put your arugula seeds at 30 seeds per foot, then how many seeds are you going to need to do that? And that's good information if you're doing like a larger size garden. They help out. You don't have to necessarily do all that math. And then they also have always a lot of succession planting information, so you can just keep replanting things and have the correct number of seeds from the beginning. I talked a little bit about the Stella Natura calendar that I like to use, and you can Google. There's several different places to buy it. I usually have a few here in our farm store. I also have an app on my phone that follows the Stella Natura calendar. So if I'm out in the garden and I'm actively planting and I can't remember which day to be planting a specific thing or seeding a specific thing, I can just pop up the app on my phone. So the Stella Natura calendar breaks down your planting by four different things. Are you planting something because you want to harvest the leaf off of it, or you want to harvest the fruit or so anything that has like a hanging vegetable or fruit? So beans, peas, tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, any of that stuff, squash even would be considered a fruit then. Are you planting it because you want the root? So radishes and potatoes and that sort of thing, carrots, or because you want the flower? And so of course there's flowers that you might want to be planting for flowers, but you might, broccoli, you're harvesting the flower with broccoli. And so then it divides that up into your planting days based on various different cosmic rhythms. So when I started using this calendar, my husband was very skeptical of it. He's like, oh yeah, you and all those other Farmers Almanac people out there planting by the moon. And so then I said, you just research this a little bit and see what you find. So the very easiest way to explain it is, if you consider the power of the moon's gravitational pull on the ocean tides, why would that not affect a plant as well? The moisture within a plant and how a plant grows. So if you have a full moon cycle, or if you have a new moon cycle, so you're going to have different growth with your plants, and that is going to affect how your plant grows. So you might plant your radishes on a leaf day, and you're going to get a lot of really gorgeous radish greens, which I also like to harvest radish greens. but you might not get much for root at all. So if you've ever planted something in the past and you just got a lot of fluff on top, but you didn't get a good root on there and you thought, what the heck was wrong with this seed? Or it could have very possibly been when you planted it. And so there's some research going into that now, of course. Research with our universities is very geared towards who's paying for the research. And so biodynamic isn't really a huge money maker for universities. So but there are some private colleges and such that are putting some effort into it. So you can try it out and see. And I'll just kind of show you, I don't have a good picture of the inside of the calendar, but it has like every day of the year in the calendar. And then, so if I look at today in this one that I have in my hand, I don't have my new one yet. So this is from last year. If I look up February, I don't even know what today is. We'll say it's I don't know, Morgan, what is it, 13th or something? It says, today it'd be a leaf day. So if I was seeding things into trays, I would want to be doing my leafy greens today. So that's how it kind of just helps me narrow down on any given day. What am I going to seed today? Okay. It's just a germinate term and an example. That's always the very first thing I get germinating in the winter are onions. And they're a very welcome sight. They're kind of unexciting, but when it's the first thing, it's very exciting. Heirloom versus all open pollinated. Probably most of you know that. Heirloom is going to be, heirloom and open pollinated. Sometimes they're used interchangeably. And so open pollinated is that the bees and such, wind, whatever is pollinating back and forth, and you're going to get, if you save the seed from that, it's typically going to be pretty stable in the next generation. Now, sometimes like corn and that sort of things will get cross-pollinated. And so, but then you have hybrid is the next term where parent plants are specifically crossed to produce a hybrid seed. So if you save the fruit from that and plant that seed, you may very well just get something very different from what you intended to get. So it might just be one of the parent, or yeah, it's interesting though to plant hybrid seed and see what you do, yeah, especially with squash. And then integrated pest management, that's a general gardening term about using some healthy methods of pest management versus pesticides and mulch. So some of these we don't really need to talk about today. Transplanting is just the moving of a plant from one growth medium to another. Where I plant into soil blocks, I put my seed into the soil block. I never handle that plant again until I transplant it out into the garden. So I have no change of medium and I don't disrupt the roots on it at all. So that's why I like to utilize the soil blocks. I put a tomato seed in there, it stays in there for the 6 weeks or whatever, and then I transplant out to the gardens. This is just the inside of our starter greenhouse. Not right now, I don't have this much stuff in there, but probably about, I would say April, this would be how it would be looking. Late April, really maybe 1st of May, even as large as the tomatoes are in there already. So the left picture is smaller, younger tomatoes. I've still got all my layers on, my coats, and then the right picture would be a few weeks later. And then a gardening zone map. And that's just from, it's like Agricultural Research Service. And then my contact information. So what else do we want to talk about here with seed starting?
We have a few questions in the chat, but I was kind of waiting there until the end instead of going back. So I'll read those off, but if anyone prefers to unmute and ask questions, feel free as well. To start, you were talking a little bit about your arugula, and someone asked, do you replant arugula in the fall or do you baby it over the summer?
You can do either. You can do either. If you have the space and you want to keep it alive through the summer, you can you can kind of just keep like trimming it down a little bit and try to keep it alive. And then going into fall, I would probably trim it pretty good and then let it start leafing out as it cools down. You can easily replant it though too, because it's such a short germination and you know, growth or fast growth on arugula. So you could do either one.
And then there's quite a few questions about your soil blocking process, so I'm hoping you can talk about a little bit about that. Some of the specific ones are talking about making sure that the soil block allows enough root space for that number, however many weeks, and then also kind of your watering routine, what soil you're using, those types of things.
Okay. Yes, so this can kind of be a whole session on its own, soil blocking. And for that, I just always kind of encourage an in-person session if possible, so everybody can try it out and see it. But basically you have the soil blockers and you can just like, there are a lot of places that are selling soil blockers right now. When I started doing soil blocking in 2011 or whenever I started doing it, there was one place that I could find the mechanisms to do the soil blocking. And when I would do a search on soil blocking, it would come up with great big like industrial barrier walls. like the big concrete sort of, I don't even know what they were, but it was like for you know, whole yeah, building walls for like landscaping and stuff like that. And it was like, no, this is not, I want to just do these little soil blocks. So I typically always use about they're like 2-inch by 2-inch blocks, and the blockers will do, you can do a tiny little handheld one that will do, I think, 4 at a time, or you can do the one I have is a little bit older, so it just does 12. That's like a standing blocker. So you can stand up while you're doing the soil blocking and then put them into trays. Now there's ones that I believe do like 15 at a time, something like that. So, and then you have little tiny micro ones that are just maybe a 1/2 inch or so, 3/4 of an inch square. And lots of times they'll just put the tinier seed in that, or herbs or something like that, into the micros. And then the basically 2-inch ones is what I start everything in those. And then there's a bigger, like a 4-inch block. So you can start, say, your tomato if you want to in the 2-inch block, and then you can move it up into the 4-inch block. And that's a very easy process, because when you make the 4-inch block, it's got like this square opening in the middle that you just set your 2-inch block tomato into. But I just leave everything in the 2-inch blocks, and I do 50 in a tray. I use trays without holes in them. So they're a solid 10 by 20 black tray, just those cheap trays that you get at any Runnings or wherever. And I get the dome lids for right at the beginning for germinating, just keep a little bit of humidity in there. And I leave, that tomato stays in that 2-inch block until I transplant out. Now, the difference between using a block and seeding a tomato into, say, your other sort of plastic trays that have the dividers in them, is that with the dividers, when you pull your plant out, like when you buy stuff at a greenhouse, you take it home and you go to put it into your pots or your garden, and the roots have really wrapped around. The soil blocks don't do that. When the roots of each block, when the roots get out to where there's that little tiny air space between that block and the next block, the roots don't grow into the next block. They just stay there. So when they hit that air, they don't grow beyond that, but the plant will keep growing up. And I don't fertilize. My base mix that I put the seeds into has just a trace amount of fertilizer in it, very low for seed starting, so you're not burning the seeds. And I used to do all my own mixing of my soil for soil blocking. But now I just get, the last year or so, we and a couple other gardening places over at Spearfish, Cycle Farm and Budding Moon Farm have been going together and ordering in Purple Cow seed starting mix. And I just ordered like one of those big totes at a time that's 800 pounds or whatever. And then that's already all pre-mixed and it's organic. And so then we just put the loose mix into our container, add some water till it's the right consistency, and then do our soil blocking. So there's some really great videos out there now. I think we have a couple of videos. We have like a Bear Butte Gardens YouTube channel that we haven't put anything on for years, but we used to be pretty proactive about that. And I think we might have some soil blocking videos out there that just kind of show the process. And but there are a lot of videos available now about soil blocking, and it's a fun thing. I don't know, it gives my shoulders a workout and my back and all of that. And so this time of year when I kind of need to start getting into shape for gardening, I like to go out and start soil blocking in the greenhouse, and gets you warmed up too on a cold day. So, but it's pretty economical to do soil blocking, and my plants are just, there's not the shock when I transplant them from there into the garden as much as when I would start them in other manners. I don't know if I answered all the questions about soil blocking there, maybe part of them.
I think the only one that maybe can you talk more about is watering?
Oh, yeah. So I use those black trays that do not have any drain holes in them. And at first, when I'm starting the seeds in the soil blocks, I just have like a little hand sprayer, and I just spray a little squirt of water at each block where the seed, there's like a little divot where you put the seed, and just a little bit there, and then cover it with either a little more soil or some perlite or something like that. Put the dome on the top and just set them on a shelf. They don't even need lights yet because they're not germinated. And then I don't water them again until they've germinated and I have the lights on, and I notice that the blocks are starting to dry, because most of the time, if you have germinated seed and then it dies, those little seedlings die off, quite frequently it's because they're overwatered. And so I don't water again then until I'm taking the lid off, the little humidity lid off of there basically. And then I just pour water in the corner of the tray. I don't like spray over the top, and just kind of pull out one corner of the tray and pour some water in with a pitcher. And then once I move them up into the greenhouse, say if it's tomatoes, I'm going to start them in a warmer climate environment, then put them up in the greenhouse. And once I move them up there, then I just take a hose in with me, a garden hose, and just pull a corner out, have the water real gentle, and just fill the corner until the water goes up to almost the top of the soil blocks. And I do that with every tray. So basically fill it with water, and then I don't water again until the water is completely down. And they don't absorb any more water than they need. Soil blocks are they're very, very nice that way, that they just absorb what they need.
We have another question about keeping your seeds. So do you keep seeds from previous years, or do you start fresh? And if you are saving seeds, are you saving old packets, or are you saving them from the plants that you're growing?
Yes, we do save seeds, and each year we're trying to save more and more seeds. Let's see, I think Jane was on here, who helps out with the seed swap in Spearfish a lot with Cycle Farm. You know, your plants are, each of our little environments, our growing environments that we have at our own space, is different than the next person's, even if you're right next to each other. And so if I save seed from last year and plant it this year, that plant is going to do just a little bit better. It's a little more acclimated to my soil, my temperatures and all that, if I save that again. And so the more you save your seed, the better acclimated that seed is to your space. So that when I do order in seeds from outside, that's why I try to go as regionally close as I possibly can. I mean, Nebraska is a lot different than Sturgis, South Dakota, so is North Dakota, but they're as close as I can get right now for my organic seeds when I do need to bring in some seed from outside. So we save more each year, but it's a time intense process also of saving seed. And so I have one or two of my helpers that are kind of dedicated to that, and they really love it, and they keep an eye on things for me. Because I kind of get busy sometimes at that when we should be saving seed. I get busy doing something else, and I don't always see that, oh yeah, that's perfect, you know, for saving seed right now. And so I have a couple people dedicated to it, and they do a great job, and they put the little packets together. Oh, I didn't bring any in, but like right now we're thinking about what do we have enough extra that we can take to the Spearfish seed swap, because that will be this next month. And that's just shared out for free then. And we just put our little Bear Butte Gardens thing on there. And so people know that, oh, this came from Bear Butte Gardens, whether that's good or bad. They may or may not want to receive. Sometimes there might be some other things in there other than what we labeled it too. That does happen. So different kind of being entirely than what we put in the packet, but than what we thought we put in there. But yeah, we do try to like add on another thing each year that we're saving seed from. So it started out, it was just dried beans because that was easy. And then it was, I think this last year we did some eggplant and some tomatoes and peppers. And yeah, so we try to keep adding on. And then what was the question about the old seed packets? Specifically about
correct me, let me see what was the question, Melanie, if I'm wrong, but I think she was just asking whether you're saving old seed packets if you have an abundance, or if you're only taking them from your plants.
So purchase seed packets, yeah. Okay.
You order during this season and you have some left from 2024. Are you going to be using them in 2025? Or
okay, yeah.
That down to enough of a science you don't have much left over.
Yeah, it depends. Some things we have lots left over. Some things we don't have. We utilize all of it. And so I definitely will use past year's seed this year. We do seed germination tests, just the putting a few seeds in a damp paper towel in a little Ziploc or whatever. And if they're very old, like past, a few years old, maybe 5 years old even, we'll do germination tests just so we know how viable those seeds are. But we'll still use them. We just know we have to plant more to get the quantity that we want. Seed swaps are a really great place to also, if you have a bunch of extra stuff, I know Rapid City's I think Rapid City's still got a seed swap. I don't know, I guess, but it's even if you're just doing it with your neighbors and friends. I always tell people that, like, don't be afraid to use old seeds. Just check the germination on it if you're concerned about that. But a lot of that is a marketing thing that, well, if we say the seed needs to be used in 2024, then people are going to see that and think that they have to buy, we want them to buy new seed every year. So it's a very good marketing ploy. It works on all of us. And so do not be afraid though to just throw some in a damp paper towel and see if they're still going to germinate, because they probably will. We're finding seeds from Egyptian, tombs basically that are still growing. They're still able to grow. So that's pretty crazy.
Okay, I think that answered the question. Sorry if my delivery was a little confusing. But I think that answers that question. And then in the chat, I did put the link to the Bear Butte YouTube channel, and it looks like Jane shared the information for the seed swap if any of the listeners are on the west side of the state.
Yeah, that is such a fun event. Jane, do you have any more information specific, I mean, just in general about how that's gonna flow this year?
I do know that it's March 9th in Spearfish at the public library from 1:30 to 4:30. And that's about all we've gotten so far. We're meeting this Saturday to say, okay, do we want speakers? Of course, we'll have all the seeds and anyone can bring seeds that they'd like to share. But oftentimes we had kids' activities, speakers, conversations, dialogue. It's great.
Yeah, it is. It's a great way to spend a few hours just talking to people about growing, planting, all the things. And they really encourage at this seed swap too, if you have a story behind your seeds and you want to put that on the package, or I think there's even going to be some time dedicated this time that you're like, I want to share that this was my grandpa's seed that he, you know, started in Wisconsin or wherever and brought it, you know, feel that is encouraged at this seed swap.
Jane, if there are listeners that are on the west side of the state that are interested, is there a Facebook page or something that people can be looking out for more information? Or do you have an email that you can maybe put into the chat?
Sure, I could do that.
Just if people are interested as the information comes out. It looks like we have a few minutes left. Is there any other questions for Michelle?
Was there like other scale of seed starting that anybody was hoping to hear about? I kept this very small and hopefully kind of applying to beginner seed seed starters as well as maybe if you've been doing it for a few years.
Does make me excited for spring.
Definitely. It makes it's pretty white and brown here right now. Got a lot of white and brown. I'm looking out the window as I'm I'm talking to you guys, and it's like I'm looking forward to some in the greenhouse time and above zero temperatures.
It looks like we have one more question about when you're putting things in the outdoor greenhouse, maybe the timeline from when it goes from the house to the greenhouse.
So into the so like you mean the tiny seedlings like tomatoes, when I move them on out to the starter greenhouse, basically I do that usually as soon as they get to be just like a couple inches tall and they've got their true leaves. So they've got, you know, their initial leaf, and then they, what is that, cotyledon leaf, I think, and then their true leaf. So the leaves that really look like tomato leaves. Then at that point, I will move them. Okay, not if it's 10 below zero, I won't do it. But if we're starting to get just normal temperatures that are like 20s to 50s or whatever in a normal day, then I'll move them out there, and at first they'll have their dome covers on each tray, and then I'll have that covered with like cloth, the thin cloth that you row cover cloth. I'll just lay 2 or 3 layers of that on top of those trays too, and then maybe even some black plastic on the top of that if it gets really cold, just to get. But that greenhouse, our little starter greenhouse, we don't heat it, but if it's 0 degrees outside, in there on a typical day, it will be probably 50 degrees or so. So it's, as long as they have just a little bit of cover on them when they're tender, and then when they get big enough that the lids come off, I just put the cloth right on top of the plants, then just light. It's very light. And so yeah, they go out pretty early because I don't have room in my house to keep all these plants. So they have to plant up and get out there. Not woman up, not man up.
Someone asked about the not having access to the soil blockers. Could you achieve the same thing by filling trays with soil and dividing them into squares with a plastic knife to kind of create that air boundary?
You could certainly start your seeds into some sort of a tray, just a solid tray like that. I worked down at Noctigal's greenhouse in Rapid City for a few springs, and they would do that with a lot of things, and then they would pick out the little tiny seedlings and put them into bigger containers than when they were ready to go, and that worked just fine. I don't think you're going to achieve the same thing though with the air between the blocks, because it's not gonna, the blocker just really compacts it just enough that they don't disintegrate when you water them. And I don't know how you're gonna have the right combination of dry but still water to do that in a tray with a knife. And the soil blockers, you know, like I said, there's a lot of different sizes. There's just a little tiny hand one that you can do on your tabletop. They're not that expensive anymore. They're a lot more readily available. So you can certainly order them pretty easy. And I think I've even heard people say that they see them sometimes, like at thrift stores. Somebody just doesn't know what to do with it, doesn't want to do it. So, but yeah, I don't know that it would work quite the same. I don't think you'd maintain the airspace.
The
And
last
what about-
question in the chat at the moment is, what about seeds that require light to germinate? You were talking about how you don't put them in the light until they're germinated.
So what would that be? Because once they're germinated, then they need light. So I have to be watching them closely. And if I don't have my lights turned on, like usually I put them on my shelves, my lights are probably already hanging there, but I'm not turning the lights on, because until they germinate, they don't need that. It's just extra energy that we're using that the seed doesn't need to germinate. So they don't need the light until they have germinated. So I can't.
Mentioned celery is one that needs light to germinate.
I don't agree with that. I grow a lot of celery, and I do it in the trays, in the soil blocks, and I don't turn the lights on until I see there's just a tiny little bit of germination happening. But you can certainly turn the lights on, you know, so if it's celery seed, it takes it a bit. So I would probably wait like a week and then turn the lights on. It's not going to hurt anything. You're just paying for lights to be turned on.
Same. Don't see any other questions at the moment, and we are close to that hour mark. So thank you, Michelle,